Hey everyone, how y'all doing? Welcome and welcome back to my channel. It is that time of year again for the mid-year book freakout tag. This year, however, I believe Jesse the Reader has created a revamped version of the tag, adding some different questions. So I'm going to be like combining the two tags because he did leave out a couple of questions that I did want to answer. So I just added those like throughout or at the end. So I'm very excited for this tag. It's always a super fun time to do a mid-year check-in. So I'm really looking forward to answering some of these new questions and some of the old ones. So let's just get started. So the first question is, what's the best book you've read so far this year? This was a really hard question for me. In the past couple of years, I've had a really hard time in general picking like my overall favorite books of the year, but I usually have like a couple of books that I know for sure are on the list. This year I have quite a few books that I know for a fact are going to end up on my favorite books of the year list because I've been having like overall a really good reading year. Like there have not been many books that I haven't enjoyed, which is such like a stark contrast to every other year, or at least the last few years. So I have so many books that I could talk about for this question, but I decided to pick just two because I will be mentioning a lot of the other ones throughout this video. So the first one I want to talk about is 7% of Roe Devereaux by Eleanor Clover. So this is a new release of the year. It's also Eleanor Clover's debut novel, and I am obsessed with this book. Like there was just something so fun and so special about it. I believe I read it in 2 sittings, and the only reason it wasn't one sitting was because I had to stop for dinner and then I went to visit my grandma for a while. But like the entire time all I could think about was how badly I wanted to be reading this book. So the second we got home, I picked it back up and just sped through it. It's just such a fun book with a really interesting and like kind of unique concept. At least I feel like it's pretty unique. It's basically about our main character Roe Devereaux, and I believe for a school project she develops this app that's based on the game MASH, where she can basically predict your future with I believe a 93% accuracy. A tech company or like an app development company, whatever, decides to pick up her app and she becomes the spokesperson for it. And to prove its legitimacy, she ends up finding her perfect match through the app, which turns out is her ex-childhood best friend, and she has to fake date him to show the public that this app can be trusted and it is accurate. And of course real feelings arise and they have to go through their problems of why they are no longer friends and everything that went down between them. It is just so good. The romance is adorable. I absolutely fell in love with Roe Devereaux and her love interest. This book was so much fun. I really want to reread it, and you always know that if I want to reread a book right after reading it, then it is a new favorite. So I really loved this one, and if you have not read it, if you've not heard about it, I highly recommend picking it up. It is just such a fun book. And the other book that I wanted to highlight in this question is of course Planes, Trains, and All the Feels by Livy Hart. If you were around on my channel last year, then you know Talk Flirty to me was my favorite book of the year. So it's no surprise that Livy's sophomore book is also a favorite of this year. I read this. This is the only book actually that I've read so far in June, where I'm filming this at the end of the month. I'm not saying that this book is responsible for my reading slump that I'm currently in, because it's not. But also it's not responsible, if that makes any sense. This book is inspired by the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and while I don't love that movie, it was alright, but this book is just as chaotic and fun as that movie is, with our two characters just trying to get home, and just everything in the universe is like trying to stop them from getting home, with flights being delayed or cancelled, and then just everything, like cars not working. Like there's just so much going on in this book, and it's just so much fun. Our main character is getting off on the wrong foot and having to go on this journey with each other to get home. It's just so much fun. It's so chaotic, and it was just honestly such a joy to read. But obviously I tabbed it and annotated it quite extensively. I think you just saw, like, yeah, I just whole sections were just completely highlighted. I could not help myself. My poor pink highlighter put in overtime with this book, which honestly was not a surprise to me. But this is such a good book, such a good sophomore novel for Livy, and I'm just obsessed with it. So if you've not picked up Livy's debut novel Talk Flirty to Me, or her sophomore novel Planes, Trains, and All the Feels, then I definitely recommend it because it's just so much fun. The second question is, what's the most disappointing book you've read so far this year? Surprisingly, I didn't have that many books to choose from for this question. I feel like I could only think of two, and one I wasn't like overall disappointed by, like I still enjoyed it, it just wasn't what I was expecting. But there was one book that I truly just have not enjoyed this year, and that is Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell. This was the Besties and Books book club pick for May? No, for April. This was for April, and I was really excited for it. This cover is adorable. It was comped, I believe, Sorcery of Thorns, or it has like similar vibes, I guess, and it's got cottagecore vibes. Like, it just seemed like it was going to be a really cute and like charming read, but instead I was honestly just kind of bored the entire time. Like, I feel like we didn't delve deep enough into the characters or the world or the story enough for me to care about anything. Like, some of the writing was good. I did like some quotes in the book, but overall, like, there was just nothing about this book that like stuck in my brain. Like, I honestly don't remember a whole lot. So this one was really disappointing because I thought it was going to be a really cute like light fantasy book, and it just unfortunately did not hit the mark for me personally. So the next question is one that Jessie added, and it's, what's the best book recommendation you've received this year? So I could not think off the top of my head, or even like looking into it, a book that I was specifically like recommended this year that I enjoyed. So I decided to cheat a little bit. So I did not receive this book recommendation this year. I received it years ago, but I just read it this year, a few months ago, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to a Murder by Holly Jackson. So I read this as a part of my Which Booktube Friend Knows My Reading Taste the Best. Peyton recommended it to me, and I really enjoyed it. Like, her recommendation was spot on for this book. If you've not yet seen that video, I'll link it up above in the cards for you to check out. It was a lot of fun. But I've been getting more into the mystery thriller genre recently. I'm really enjoying it, and this one is no exception. I listened to the audiobook, which was really good, and I also listened to the sequel recently, which was also really good, and I'm just dying for my hold on the third book to come in. But this was just a really interesting book. It's told in a multimedia format, kind of reminiscent of Sadie by Courtney Summers, if you've read that book. And the audiobook was like a full cast, and it had really good production, so that when there were like podcast elements in the second book, or like recorded interview portions, it sounded like it was actually coming from a voice recording, and had different people voice acting. It was like a really well done audiobook. So just as an audiobook itself, like 10 out of 10, so good. But the book itself was also really compelling. I really liked the relationship that bloomed in the book, and then also just the mystery element was really interesting. Like, I really wanted to know who murdered these kids, what happened to them, and I really wanted to see it like all solved in the end, and it was really satisfying. So this book was a huge win for me, and I'm so grateful that Peyton forced me to read it. The next question is, what was your first DNF of the year? So I don't think I've like officially DNF'd anything. I could be wrong, but the only book that I could kind of think of is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, I think. I was just listening to this on audio. I think I got over halfway through it, but I was listening to it while I was crafting. I'm making a miniature library right now, and so I was listening while I was making like all the books and stuff for the library, and I just feel like I was not fully paying attention. So I feel like I'm not getting the full experience of the book because I was just honestly really bored. So I think if I'm going to read this book in the future, which I might pick it up again, I think I'll either read it physically so I can properly pay attention to it, or I'll just do something a bit more mindless and not something that's taking all of my focus and like energy, so that I can fully appreciate the story. But as of right now, I'm just not that interested in continuing it, and I just felt like if I was going to finish it, it wouldn't be doing the book justice. So I decided to stop so that I can maybe return to it one day, but I'm not super motivated at the moment to pick it back up again. The next question is a new release from this year that you've read and your thoughts on it, good or bad. So I had quite a few options that I could speak about for this one, but I decided to talk about Happy Place by Emily Henry. I filmed a 24-hour readathon vlog recently that I'll link up above in the cards for you to check out, and I read this book in that video. I adored this book. Contrary to what the title says, it's not a very happy book. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not that happy. So this is all very misleading. It's not a happy book, okay? Like, I think I teared up a little bit while reading it. So it's basically following our main character Harriet, and every summer her and her friends go to a cabin, I think for like a week, just to spend some time together and get away. But this year is a bit different because her and her boyfriend Wynn have broken up, but they've yet to tell their friends. So they decide to fake date for the duration of the vacation because they don't want to spoil what they find out is their last summer at this cabin. And so they agree to fake date so that they don't ruin anything for their friends, and obviously obviously that comes with them having to figure out a lot of things about their relationship and everything that went into them breaking up, and obviously they fall in love again, and it's just really beautiful. But there are a lot of heavy things in this book, and honestly I can't remember them all, but there's a lot of talk about death of a parent, so just keep that in mind if that is something that is sensitive to you. But this book was just, I don't know, it was so beautiful. I love second chance romances, and I also love fake dating, so two of my favorite tropes in one book equals perfection in my eyes. But I also just feel like they were both done super well. Like, I really loved the fake dating. I also just love when in general, like, his love language is definitely physical touch, because he was just always holding on to Harriet, just always touching her. Like, my love language is definitely like physical touch, and I just, if I had somebody like Win in my life, I would just melt into a puddle of goo, because I love that. Anyways, the second chance part was also done really well, and I found it really satisfying in the end, seeing them come back together and work through all of their issues. It was so good, and I desperately want to reread this book, and honestly I will not be surprised if I reread it again this summer, because it was so good. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so the next question is a book that came out in the first half of the year that you want to read, and a book coming out in the second half of the year that you are anticipating. So for the first part of that question, of a book that came out in the first half of the year that I want to read, is Sorry Bro by Talene Voskuni. I could have picked a few other books for this question, but this is one of the first ones that came to mind. This, I believe, came out in January, and I really want to get to it. This just seems like a really good book for the summer. It's a romance novel. It takes place in San Francisco, and it just seems like it's going to be a really good time. So this one is definitely one that I need to get to this year, and specifically I want to read it in the summer. And then I have a few books that I want to mention that are coming out in the second half of the year. So the first one comes out in July, and it's You with a View by Jessica Joyce. I love Jessica so much, and I've been highly anticipating reading her debut novel. It's another rom-com, and it just seems so good. Honestly, I don't remember much about the plot because memory is garbage, but I just know that I'm going to love it. All of the snippets that she has posted on her Instagram and on her Twitter have just been so good that I just know I'm going to be obsessed with this book. And I honestly cannot wait to get my hands on it in July. The next one is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This comes out in September. It is the first book in the Threads of Power series, or the fourth book in the Shades of Magic series. I absolutely adore A Darker Shade of Magic, and so I'm really excited to get this like continuation of the series and get to delve deeper into the world, meet new characters, see our old favorite characters. I just think it's going to be a really great time. I love this world so much, and it's going to be a lot of fun to dive back into it, so I'm really anticipating that one. And then the last one that I just want to quickly highlight is The Library of Shadows by Rachel Moore. Rachel is a dear friend of mine. She went through Author Mentor Match with me, and we're in the same writing group chat, and I'm just obsessed with her, and I love this book so much. So yes, I've already read it. I've read it twice. She sent me 2 different versions of it, and I just love it so much, and I'm so excited to read it in its physical form, because yes, I will be reading it for a third time. How can I not? It's about ghosts. It takes place at like a boarding school, and there's a cute ghost named Mateo. I mean, what do you want from me? There's a library. Her humor is just so charming and funny, and this book is just an honest to God delight. It's so much fun. It's so atmospheric. So if you love ghosts and ghost books, libraries, anything like that, I highly recommend picking this up in September when it comes out. I am so excited to reread it. It's going to be perfect fall vibes, and I'm so excited. The next question is, what's the most beautiful book you've added to your collection, or a beautiful book you'd like to own? So I'm just going to answer the first part of this question of what's a beautiful book you've added to your collection. So for me, I'm gonna go with Anne of Green Gables by L. Montgomery. This is the Reader's Digest edition. I bought this at some point this year. I don't remember when I bought it, but definitely like I think in the first few months of the year. But this is a copy of Anne that I've had my eye on for a while. I'm just absolutely obsessed with it. I think it's so cool looking. I don't know, there's just something about it that I love so much, and I love seeing it on my Anne shelf. I do have it displayed, and I'm just absolutely obsessed with this copy. The next question is, what genre have you read the most from this year? And for this one, I don't know if this is actually the genre I've read the most from this year, because honestly I did not go and count. But I do feel like I've been reading a lot, and I mean a lot, of YA contemporaries recently. I feel like in recent years I haven't been reading like a huge amount of YA contemporaries, which is so odd because it is my favorite genre, age category, like everything is my favorite. So I don't know why I haven't been gravitating towards it in the last couple of years. I mean, I've probably still read a lot of them. I just like, I feel like I haven't had at least that many favorites from YA contemporaries. So I was so excited when in May I read just a crap ton, and I mean a crap ton of YA contemporaries, and I just feel like I was living my very best life. So I'm just gonna say that I've read mainly YA contemporaries because that's just how it feels in my heart. But I've just been having the time of my life reading a lot of YA contemporaries off of my physical TBR. It's just been a huge delight. The next question is, do you feel your reading tastes have changed or shifted at all this year with a new favorite trope, a new genre, favorite theme? I don't really have an answer for this question. I feel like I'm pretty solid in the tropes that I like and the genres that I like. I will say I have been reading a little bit more of mystery books, but I do feel like that started last year, not this year. I have solidified second chance romance as being like my second favorite trope, but I feel like I also kind of knew that before. So I don't feel like my reading tastes have shifted all that much. I've just been reading more of my favorite genre, which I really enjoyed. The next question is, if you set any bookish goals for yourself this year, how are they going? So not the greatest. I created a TBR for the year of 23 books I want to read in 2023. I've only read a few of them, so I have a lot of work ahead of me if I want to complete that list, which I do really want to complete it. But yeah, I have not been doing too great in that department. I have read like over 5 new 2023 releases, so that's great. That is a goal ticked off, but I believe I am behind on my 100 book goal, and I have not helped myself in the month of June because so far I've only read 1 book and we have like 5 or 6 days left, so it's not looking good at the moment, but I know that I can do it. I just need to have another really good reading month, and this month just was not one of those months, unfortunately. The next question is, what book format have you been gravitating towards this year? Definitely physical. I always gravitate towards physical more than anything else. I don't like ebooks, and I do love audiobooks. I just have not been gravitating towards them recently. Like whenever I would normally listen to an audiobook, I've been either listening to music or watching TV or watching YouTube, so I just haven't felt like listening to audiobooks much recently. I've only listened to a select few. The next question is, a book you've read so far this year that you feel embodies the vibe of your reading year. So I feel like the only things that I can answer with this are YA contemporaries, because I feel like I've truly rediscovered or reinvigorated my love for YA contemporaries this year, like I mentioned earlier. So I want to highlight 2 books. One of them I already talked about, but I just feel like I have to mention them. So the first one is Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. This one was January's Besties in Books book club pick, and it was such a good way to start off the year because I adored this book so much, and I knew I was going to love it. It's a book that heavily features lists, which is just my favorite thing. I love when books have lists in them, like just something like a formula that a character has to follow. I adore that. And this one's about our main character who makes lists for everything, and she has this one specific list of things that she wants to do before she graduates. I think that's what it is. And her journal with all of her lists in it goes missing one day, and then she starts being blackmailed, where this person who's blackmailing her is going to post photos of her lists if she doesn't complete the list of things to do before graduation. And there are things on those lists that she really does not want made public, so she ends up teaming up with the guy who's kind of responsible for her journal going missing to help her complete that list. And obviously a cute romance ensues, and let me tell you, this boy right here, what's his name? Carter Bennett. I adore him with every fiber of my being, and I love him with our main character Quinn so much. Their vibes, okay? Their vibes were beautiful. I was so giddy reading this book. Just everything about it was so good. I did tab it up and just had like the greatest time reading it. And this is another book that after I finished it, I just immediately wanted to read it again. So I will not be surprised if I pick this book up again this year and just read it all the time, constantly, always, forever. It's just one of those books books that is just, it's so good. And the other one is 7% of Row Devereaux by Eleanor Clover, because this is another YA contemporary that I've just really loved this year. So obviously I already talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it much more, but I really love this book, and again, will not be surprised if I reread it again this year. And then also I just quickly want to mention every Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegman Broca book, which are all kind of just behind me right there. I've read quite a few of them this year, as well as their like adult romance books, which are on the shelf. I just love them all so much, and I couldn't decide on just one of them to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about them like generally. I'm obsessed with their books. Like, I've just like been eating them up so fast. There's just like, I don't know, like I think there's crack in them. Like, I'm actually addicted. They are just so good. They go so hard, so cute. So the next couple of questions are ones that were from the original tag that Jessie did not include, so I've just tacked them on here at the end. So the first one is best sequel you've read so far this year. Normally I don't have a good answer for this question, because normally I don't read that many sequels, and if I do, they're just like mediocre and I don't really like deserve to be a favorite. But I've read some good ones this year. So the first one that I want to mention is Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This is the third book in the Last Hours trilogy, and I know that a lot of people are disappointed with this book, and I totally understand why. Okay, in hindsight I can see the problems with it. Okay, but while I was reading this book, I was eating it up. Okay, I was having the time of my life, and then I was devastated. But overall, this book was really fun. I mean, obviously it was like devastating. Like, I sobbed. I cried. Definitely. 100%. I was not okay with some of the things that Cassandra Clare decided to do in this book. It hurt my soul. But overall, I love this series so much, and I honestly think it might be my favorite Shadowhunter series. I don't know, the verdict's out on that one. I need to reread some of her other series before like I definitively say that this is my favorite. But this book, I just had so much fun reading it. I ate it up. I truly did. Like, there's nothing else to say. I really loved it. And despite its issues, which like I said, looking back, are quite glaring, and I would say that like aspects of it are quite disappointing considering this is the last book in the series. I do feel like some things deserved more page time than others. I feel like some things were brushed over that really shouldn't have been, but overall I loved it so much. So I had to mention this book. It was just, I'm just a sucker for a good Shadowhunter book. What can I say? The other two books that I wanted to mention are from the same series, and it is The Creeping Shadow and The Empty Grave, which are books 4 and 5 in the Lockwood & Co. series by Jonathan Stroud. So I watched the first season, and the only season, unless some streaming service decides to pick it up, of Lockwood & Co. earlier this year, and I just am obsessed with it. I've watched it numerous times now. I low-key really want to watch it again. And so once I watched the show, I was like, oh, okay, I think I need to read the books. There are 5 books. I read them all really quickly, and books 4 and 5 are my absolute favorites in the series. I don't remember specifically what happens in each one necessarily because my memory is really bad, but oh my god, there was just so many good things that happened in those last 2 books. I feel like it was a really satisfying like end to a really great middle grade series. The next question is a book that made you cry, and normally I also don't have an answer for this question because I just don't remember, but this one I do have a definitive answer, and it is Chain of Thorns. Yep, by Cassandra Clare. I sobbed. I sobbed. I think I even took pictures of me sobbing and sent it to Lisa and probably Alyssa. This book destroyed me. It ripped my heart out. It stomped on it. Like, I knew going into this book that something devastating had to happen. Like, it's Cassandra Clare, you know, like it was gonna happen. And I would not have been okay with like anything happening to anybody, and that proved correct, because I was like, I hate that this happened to this person, but I also wouldn't want it to happen to anybody else either. So this book was heartbreaking. It truly just like shattered my entire soul. Okay, and to end on a bit of a happier note, the last question is a book that made you happy. So I also could have a lot of potential answers for this question. I feel like any YA contemporary that I've read this year could go for this question, but I just want to highlight 2. No, I'm gonna highlight 3. I'm gonna add 1 in here. So 7% of Row Devereaux by Eleanor Clover, obviously Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. And then one I have yet to talk about in this video is As If on Cue by Marissa Cantor. This book. So good. It's a theater book. Our characters basically, to save their own art programs, band and theater, our main characters have to come together to create a musical, and it's so good. It's like rivals to lovers, but it also has like boy has been in love with girl for the entire time, and it's so good. That kind of hurt. The first kiss scene, immaculate. Okay, it was actual perfection. I was so giddy. Like, I was screaming, crying, kicking my feet in the air, having the best time. So this one definitely brought a giddy smile to my face, definitely made me happy. Oh my god, okay, another mid-year book freakout tag done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. Comment down below and let me know your favorite book of the year so far, and maybe also your least favorite book of the year so far. I'd really love to know. Subscribe if you have not yet already, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!